the academics of two of the largest government schools adopted in public-private partnership. Previously, Dr. Amna Pasha has worked as the vice rector at the Government Elementary College of Education, which is managed by Durdeen. Dr. Amna Pasha has also been the national lead for Pakistan on Al Khan Foundation Schools to 2030 program. She has also worked as an associate director, teacher development at the Al Khan University Examination Board. And she has also extensive experience in e-learning. Dr. Pasha completed her PhD from UCL UK in the area of global learning and skills, and she publishes on these themes. She's currently editing an encyclopedia volume on global education and learning with a focus on global social justice in education. So thank you so much for being here, taking out time for us, Dr. Amna Pasha. Over to you. The format will be that you will have around 25 minutes to talk about your work, and then this will be followed up with questions. Over to you. Thank you again.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tayyiba. And I promise I'm not as old as my profile makes me sound. Thank you very much for having me and for taking out the time to listen. I'm quickly going to share my screen and hope that you all can see it.
We can see it.
Okay, perfect. So I'm just going to begin by saying that the way that I have structured this talk is to talk about holistic interventions, but to do so with the example of Zindagi Trust. And that way you will also understand the work that we do. And it's grounded a little more in the practical as well. So I hope that that works. What I want to talk about is holistic intervention. So when Dr. Tayyiba had contacted me about this talk, I was thinking of all of the different things that obviously education is so broad, there's so much that can be spoken about. And my experience, alhamdulillah, has also been in so many different areas within education. But what I've always found as the core concern personally for me is कि हम बहुत चीज़ों को एक silo में देखते हैं. So it's the cognitive, or it's a focus on the physical, or if it's a focus on mental health. All of these are great, but if you don't look at them together, you cannot improve the whole child. You cannot help them. You cannot develop the way that we hope for them to develop. So interventions often, they start off strong and then they tend to phase out and, wither out. And that's not fault of the program or the intervention itself. It's that education and just like our lives have so many moving pieces, like, right? So अगर आप काम में बहुत अच्छे हैं, लेकिन आपकी पर्सनल लाइफ में कुछ हो रहा है, या आपके शौहर की पर्सनल लाइफ में कुछ हो रहा है, या कुछ ना कुछ हो रहा है, so your work life will get affected, right? So nothing operates in a silo. Everything is moving together. It's like this machinery and all the wheels are churning. So you have to keep an eye on all of those different wheels when we're talking about student development, so that we can actually help them to get where we hope for them to be. So that's what I want to talk about today. So I'm starting with the whole child approach, right? The way in which this talk is structured. And then I'm going to cover the whole school approach. And then I'm going to talk about a whole system approach. So that's how I'm going to talk you through the next 20-25 minutes. So what is holistic intervention? Like I said, we often focus on the cognitive, and that's usually the main piece. That's the academic, the curricular, what they're studying in school. But there's a lot of other areas that need to be focused on as well. So there's the mental, of course, that's getting a lot of popularity now, the social, the emotional, and then you have the physical as well. And so when we talk about a child, we need to think about their development on all of these different aspects and not just one. ASCD came up with this list of 5 areas in which they talk about how it is that you can think about holistic whole child improvement or intervention. And so the 5 areas they talk about is think about health, think about safety, think about engagement, support, and think about whether the student is being challenged. And so what I've done here is I've put a few icons from the previous slide to get a sense of each of these areas actually hit on some of the elements that make up the different aspects of a child, right? So whether that's the cognitive or the social or the emotional. So for example, if we talk about safety, an environment that is physically and emotionally safe, you're hitting on the physical aspects, you're hitting on the emotional aspects, you're hitting on the social aspects. So I found this list to be a great way to think about, is my intervention, when I think about a whole child approach, is my intervention hitting any of these or all of these or how many of these? So let's come to Zindagi Trust. The vision of the organization is to empower students to reach their full potential by offering holistic, inclusive education experience and advocating at the policy level. So what does that mean in terms of its mission? It's very clear that it's two main things, all right? Transforming selected institutions into model schools. That is through interventions both academically as well as infrastructurally, and then advocating for educational reform. So the key here is we treat our schools like laboratories where you're testing out programmatic interventions, you're testing out, for example, a governance structure, you're testing out how to work with the community. It's not about scaling this up by adopting more schools. So that's definitely not the model we want to go for. It's keeping it small and treating this like a laboratory. But the second phase, that's the key one, is the advocacy phase, which is when something works and we say, hey, this is successful. इससे हमें पता चला है कि बहुत बच्चों की बेहतरी हो रही है, उनकी learning outcomes बेहतरी हो रही है, या we find that their mental health is better. So then we take that to the government and we advocate for it ताकि सारे state schools में वो enforce हो. So like I keep reiterating, Zindagi Trust mission is not to adopt 100 or 200 government schools. It's actually to treat the ones we have as testing ground and then to advocate for it at the policy level. So before I come back to interventions, I'm going to just help you understand the different things we've advocated for in the past to kind of show how that piece works. And then I'm going to come back to talking about our interventions. So advocacy, one of the key ones that perhaps you may know about is ending proper punishment. So this is something that our founder, Shahzad Roy, is very passionate about and something that we have been advocating for a very long time. And finally, in November of 2021, it was passed in the parliament, approved that corporal punishment is going to be banned across Pakistan, right? That means ke thappad marna, dande se marna, all of that in school is no longer, any school is no longer acceptable, and you could do a case against the teacher who, if they resort to such means. So that's something that we have been advocating for very heavily. The second example is of the revision of the annual confidential report. So for every government employee, they are actually measured on what is called an annual confidential report, ACR. So grade 19, grade 6 to grade 16, सारी जो officers होते हैं, अब वो police में हो या teachers हो या foreign service में हो, it doesn't matter. They all are actually assessed on the same measure. And an example of that is up on the screen. So for example, in the first indicator, there's typing, how fast their typing speed is. Now, as you would obviously know, that has nothing to do with teaching. As a skill, it has nothing to do with their performance, how they are in the classroom. So the ACR actually is not directly evaluating the performance of teachers. And so again, the thing that we have been advocating for and are happy that it has been adopted in Sindh. So now in Sindh, all of the government teachers are assessed on what we created, which is a personal evaluation form, PER. It was developed in consultation with the school's education and literacy department and other government officials. But the idea was the same. We need to be evaluating teachers on obviously things that are pertinent to their skill, their time in the classroom, so their engagement with students, lesson planning, things like that. So again, this is something that we advocated for and are happy that it has been passed, at least in Sindh so far. So here's a picture of us just the bill getting passed for Sindh and approving that performance evaluation report. And the third is child protection through life skill based education. So this is something we advocated for after the very sad case of the girl Zainab, who was raped and murdered. So we advocated for a life skill based education curriculum for grades 6 to 9 in all schools, and this has been adopted by Sindh and Balochistan. What this curriculum entails is topics around good touch, bad touch, secret touch, menstrual hygiene, how to speak to your parents about something that is uncomfortable that's taking place with you. So it's a lot of helping our students to understand how to protect themselves, as well as understanding their bodies, all of the different changes they're probably going to go through and all of that. So again, very heavily advocated for LSBE, and we're in the process of pushing through this curriculum. It's for 6 to 9, but we're hoping to expand it to the younger years as well. So I've given these examples just to show how key that advocacy piece is in our mission. And now I'm going to jump right back to talking about interventions. All right. So first, the question you may be asking is why public school reform? A majority of our children, Pakistani students, go to government schools. Okay, so that is the main option that is out there. Number two, these government schools have the infrastructure, it's already present. So there's no need to set up another building. There's no need to find land, all of that. The government is the one that has that infrastructure ready and present. And the third is that they have the resources, the reach, the responsibility to serve Pakistani children. So hence the idea for Zindagi Trust is not to create a parallel system to the government system कि हम 100 और school adopt करें या सारे government schools adopt करते, ऐसा नहीं है. It is really to help the government in fulfilling its responsibility, and hence, like I said, that testing ground and then the advocacy, जिसके बारे में मैंने अभी बात की, that becomes the key piece. Because what we learn, we have to advocate it with the government for them to adopt those practices, policies, curriculums, procedures, whatever, and roll it out to all of their government schools so that the scalability lies with them. So talking about our schools, we have currently two government schools. That's SMB Fatma Jinnah, that was adopted in 2007. That's our flagship school. It's in Sadr Garden West in Karachi. It has this is an old stat, it's now about 2,800 students. And then later on in 2015, we adopted Khatoon Pakistan, and that is near Stadium Road. That is 850 students. Again, this is about 1,000 now. This population is more multi-religious and multi-ethnic. The reason for this really just is the catchment area. So where the school is located, obviously our students come from around Ird-Gird, और जो Stadium Road campus है, वहाँ पे बहुत ज़्यादा एक multi-ethnic, multi-religious population रहती है. So we have about 20% non-Muslims, for example, in KPS. SMB Fatma Jinnah is multi-ethnic, but it's predominantly 100% Muslim population here. These are our two government schools. We do have a third school, but that's a private school, and that's Malala's in Shangla, funded by Malala Fund that we also run. But that's not a public school, that is a private school, and so not going to be the topic for today. So I'm coming back to this. If you remember, I spoke about these 5 areas, and I'm going to touch on each one when I speak about the interventions that Zindagi Trust has adopted. So the first, when we talk about health, and again, the idea here is that each student enters school healthy and learns about and practices a healthy lifestyle. So at Zindagi Trust, we offer breakfast to all of our students until grade 3. And again, this was a learning when we had a girl faint early in the morning because she had not had breakfast. And obviously the population we are serving, they are often unable to have 3 square meals in the day, right? So the children were underserved, and we found that it was obviously having a lot of impact on academics. They can't pay attention if they're hungry. And it was to the extent that we had, a student faint. And so the breakfast program is something we're particularly proud of. It's a free of cost program in which all of our students up till grade 3 get a healthy breakfast in the morning. We're hoping to scale this up to older children because we've got a lot of demand there now. But currently it's still grade 3. And then, of course, we have making sure the canteen is healthy, helping them understand, eating healthy, practicing a healthy lifestyle. We've also got a garden behind the breakfast room where we're trying to grow our own fruits and vegetables so that it's also a sustainable model. And we can make sure that what we are putting on the table in the morning is something that is coming from our own garden, so as also to make it a sustainable model in that sense. The second aspect is safety. So each student learns an environment that is physically and emotionally safe for students and adults. So I'm going to take you through a couple of pictures. This is actually a picture of the ground of the KPS ground before we adopted it. So this was the state it was in when we got it. This is what it looks like now. A lot of infrastructural changes we've made. That was the pre, this is the current state of the art room. Again, a corridor at present. All of these changes are to ensure that the environment the students and teachers, staff are working in is safe, it's clean. Again, this is from SMB Fatma Jinnah, our library, what has been converted into. So a lot of, while the brick and mortar is there, but as you can see, there's a lot of other work that needed to go into this. Also, there were a lot of drug addicts in both of these schools that we also had to clear out. So there's a lot of other things that you have to make sure about in order to make sure that you have a safe environment for the girls. Alongside that, sorry, the slide's gotten a bit messed up, but when we talk about safety, there's a couple of other things as well, right? So first is counseling is available for all students. We have counselors on both campuses. And so students, should they be feeling anything actually, so emotionally unwell, or if the teacher notices that this, student is showing a lot of anger today, or very, very quiet, not speaking, very unlike herself, they can refer, the student can go themselves as well. So there are different mechanisms in order to ensure that we have that students are supported in their mental health. We have a very robust policies and practices for child protection that are in place. Because it's an all-girls schools, both of them, obviously this was a top priority, but regardless as well, we think it's really important to make sure that there are strong standards, guidelines, to make sure that child protection is of utmost importance. And then, like I had said, in the advocacy piece, life skills-based education is also something we offer. And again, all of this is to make sure we're providing a safe environment for our students. So safety, not just physically, but in a lot of other aspects as well. All right, and then we talk about engaged, right? So we need to make sure that each student is actively engaged, connected to the school, the broader community. And so in order to do that, along with curriculars, we make sure there's a lot of other offerings for our students. Government schools don't offer art. So, we, however, do offer art, and this is something we're advocating for, that art should be included in all government schools across Pakistan. Sports, mind sports, chess and Scrabble is also something we're particularly proud of. We have national champions coming out of Zindagi Trust. So the girls really enjoy chess. Music is also something that we offer. This is something we have had to battle a lot with in terms of getting community on board, because there is this perception of music. So yeah, at present, it's not all students that do music. We only offer it to those whose parents have allowed permission, but guitar, piano, violin are all of the different instruments that we offer and provide to the girls, and they take them home to practice and so on. So we're very cognizant about making the school environment engaging outside of the core curricular. And then supported. So each student is supported by qualified caring adults. For that, it's really important that we have a strong professional development team. We have a very dedicated team, one individual for each subject. We have a separate person for ECE. And it's not just pre-service, so those who are joining us in an academic year, but throughout the year, there's consistent professional development support, so that our teachers are then better able to help students. And like I said, counseling is something that we provide as well. Trained counselors, so again, they're surrounded by qualified caring adults. And then making sure that they're challenged. So of course, at the core of every education institution is, of course, preparing them for success in the future. So that is the core outcome. And so what does challenge mean? It could mean making sure that your curriculum is rigorous and it is in depth and it's comprehensive. And then there are other things as well to consider, right? So, like I said, making sure your professional development team is there and ready to help teachers provide that rigorous program. But then, like, there's other ways in which you would do it. So, for example, philosophy is something that we've introduced because we noticed a strong lack of critical thinking in our students. And so we thought, we are integrating it within each subject, but formalizing that into a course in which we're really just able to come together and ask a lot of why questions is something that we thought was an important intervention. Coding, a very, very popular skill now and very important for this century. So our girls are offered coding, so they're all learning how to code, which even I don't know. So we think it's a really important skill again for the future. And because helping students to succeed, it's important to keep up with what are the trends in education, right? Where is the economy going? Where is it that the global world is going? What are the skills, the competencies that we need? So earlier, I'm sure you would have heard perhaps in your course of study, the four C's. You need communication, you need critical thinking. And that became the buzzword. And then a lot of it now is about, but wait a minute, we actually need a lot more than that. You need values, you need this, you need that. So really it's about keeping on top of the trends in education in order to prepare your students better or offer to them the variety of things that will perhaps help them, hopefully, in the future. So one of those was and is the coding program currently only offered in the middle school. We're hoping to bring this down to the younger years as well. And then we come to the whole school intervention. So like I said, we started with the whole child, and now we're talking about the whole school. Just helping a child in that, okay, I'm going to cover all of these different aspects. It doesn't matter unless the environment in which they're housed is also role modeling all of those skills, those values, those qualities. I'm sure a lot of you have read the article by Bernadette Dean, right, which talked about, because social studies is my forte, where she's talking about what do students understand about democracy. But then she studies the whole structure. She studies the textbooks and what the leadership understands and how the school operates. And actually, there is no democracy in a school. The idea is that, in general, what happens is that the principal decides, or there's a board of governors or directors who decide, and it's a top-down approach. So there is no democracy, and yet we want to teach about democracy. So that's the kind of idea when we talk about whole school intervention. You have to see that the school itself is the breeding ground for all of the different things you are trying to inculcate in a student. So if you're saying mental health is important or physical wellness is important, that's also true for your teachers. It's true for your head. It's true for your community members. So you cannot work in isolation. For example, we've had cases where we're telling the children, eat healthy, and they go home and the parents don't understand that concept. They're giving them chips and this and that. And there's these mixed messages that you're sending home. That's not going to have a long-term impact because the mixed messages is confusing them, and most likely they're perhaps going to go with what their parent is saying. And so it's important in the intervention design to think about all of the different pieces. So same thing, we have strong support for our leadership and workshops to help them grow and understand how it is that their practices are impacting the school. For the staff and teachers, same thing. A lot of it outside of what is happening in the classroom, it's also about you. How are you doing? What are you feeling? What are you thinking? How are you improving? What are your practices? And for the community, this is the most important piece. A school operates within the community. So it's important to take the parents on board, and that's not just through parent-teacher meetings. But parent councils are very important. So have a parent council, make sure they're representatives, and make sure they're going back to other parents to communicate the school is doing this, or this is the direction we want to take. Involve them a lot more in what's happening in the school and then in other things as well. So for example, when we recently partnered with TikTok, and this was for digital safety, because again, like I said, when you're preparing children for success in the future, you need to understand all of the different things they have access to and all the things you need to prepare them for with, and also the risks that come with that. So digital technology has a lot of risks associated which are not talked about. And so the collaboration with TikTok was, how do you actually, these children have these phones at such a young age, how are we protecting them? How do we make sure we protect them from online harassment, trolling, bullying? All of this is actually a very normal part of life now for anybody who has a social media account that may not be personal, and even personal ones often do. And so we had workshops with parents, helping them understand parental control, monitoring, what is healthy monitoring, and so on. So it's not just helping the child, but it's actually thinking about the entirety in terms of the school. And finally, there's the whole system. And I think this is important because, like I said when I started this talk, there's a lot of moving pieces in all of this, right? So we are in a government school, we work with government teachers. And that is difficult in a lot of ways because a lot of them are not trained, or almost most of them are not trained. There are no government license. There's no government licensing, anyways, in Pakistan for teachers. So what that means is that you have a lot of unqualified teachers, and hence we have the very robust professional development team. But every year you lose a bunch of teachers to either early retirement, they get transferred, something or the other happens in the sector. So there's no longevity. And when there's no longevity, you're just repeating the same courses or the same modules or the same material again and again with new teachers, because you haven't been able to build and grow as you would have with a teacher who may have stayed with you for 5 years. So now she's learned this, she's better, now I'm going to teach her this. But when they leave you in 1 year, 2 years is usually the maximum time. What ends up happening is you actually don't get that time for growth. And so the collaboration we then have now is with Durbin, which is a adopted government elementary college of education, which prepares government teachers under public-private partnership. And all of these teachers will be feeding into both of our schools. So what that means is we now have to worry less about our professional development because we know we're getting trained teachers coming in with 4-year bachelor's of education degrees. And so what I'm talking about growing in terms of teaching them other skills is something that we can now focus on because we know we've got a qualified lot. And that's the whole system, because while we can intervene, that key piece, if the teachers keep changing or they're unqualified, we will forever just keep doing the same thing. It's like a rat running in that wheel constantly. It's not going to be able to actually move forward. And so it's important to think about interventions in the system within their life. How can I improve the quality of teachers coming in so that I am able to have, achieve all of the other things that I've just spoken about. And so through partnership, in this case with Durbin, but other institutional partnerships, policies, things like that, we are able to take a whole system change in terms of intervention. And so that brings me to the end of my talk, and I think I'm just on time, I hope. Yes, so I'm going to end here. Thank you.
You are. Thank you so much, Amnaji. And I would request all the participants to either raise their hands or put their comments in the chat box or questions in the chat box. So while everyone, thank you for this, letting us know about this fascinating work that Zindagi Trust is doing. A lot of contribution, much needed. So I have a few questions, 3 questions actually, and this will give time to others to put the questions together. First question is, why only girls school? Because at times, even if you're talking about changing of attitude or something, it's the boys' attitudes or boys' way of looking at gender differences also, or whatever issues also need to be there. This is question number 1. Question number 2 is, how do you how do you evaluate the impact of your interventions? And related to this is the question is, how do you decide that you need to add this thing or the other to the curriculum or to sort of revise it? So is there an evaluation mechanism in place? And my last question is, all right, I think I'll come to my last question is looking at, do you also sort of like have in your school any children with disabilities? Would you like to move that way? So we are talking about inclusive Usman. Ji, over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Tayyiba. Great questions. So first and foremost, we didn't ask for a girls' school. So when we put in the papers for a public-private partnership and asked to adopt the schools, we were given girls' schools, ironically, or by chance, but that was not a purposeful decision in any way. And incidentally, both turned out to be girls' school. But I completely agree with you that while we're working on the girls, I also personally think it's very important, if not more, to work with the boys on things like the same thing when we say life skills based education is equally important for boys, right? They are also equally under threat, number one. They're as important to have as champions for women, if we think about it that way. On so many different elements and aspects, it's just as important to work with boys as it is for girls. So none of this was purposeful. It's just what landed with us when we put in the papers for the public-private partnership. And so actually we do hope in the future that we would get a boys' school or a co-ed perhaps, but boys I think is what is going to be, just because I think there's so much learning in terms of policies, procedures, practices that we would like to be sure that we understand. So for example, with the girls' school, we know a lot of things we now, through our experience have learned that you need to be aware of, that you need to help with. So for example, we have partnered with an organization that supports us by having pads in all of our toilets in both schools across the year, right? So it's something that we know the girls need. We want to be able to provide it free of cost, and it's there so it doesn't impact their school day. And there will be other challenges and similar as well as similar things we want to offer boys as well. For example, coding and so many other things we think they should also have access to. So absolutely, that was not by design. The second is evaluating impact. Absolutely, that's a big one. So we have a little different, depending on what the intervention is, qualitative and quantitative mechanisms for evaluation. So alongside if it's the infrastructure as well, right? So how are we measuring safety of a building? How many security cameras? How often is it cleaned? So there's an entire metrics, a log frame that we have developed to try and say what's working, what's not. Last year and the year before last, we also ran the EGMA. How are we in literacy? How are we in early years? We use other international metrics to kind of get a sense of where we stand. So there is a lot of that. It's internal, and we would like to open it up also to an external examination, which would be important. But we are cognizant that because we're treating this like a lab, we do need to make sure it's not just us saying, oh yeah, we're great. That's no way to run. So while we are aware of it, we're very also happy and open to have others come in and say, this is where we think, you stand and this is where you could go with this. Which brings me to the third question of yours. How do you decide what to add or take out into a curriculum? So nothing is done in isolation. Again, I think what's important in when we're talking about holistic intervention is you cannot operate alone in a silo. It's the same thing for an organization. So we partner with whoever is, willing, able, competent in that field to partner with. We're more than happy to partner with them because we believe it's a lot of people need to come together to make things successful. It can't be one person or one individual or one organization. So for example, for LSBE, we began with Ahang and their life skill based curriculum. And then in our schools, because we felt this is what's missing. So we go back to them and say, this is what you need to add. This is what's not here. The digital safety component is completely missing over there. So we said, hey, wait a minute, we need somebody to partner with who can help us understand them, and who better than TikTok, who better than Meta, who are also in this area, so know this. better than we would perhaps. Similarly, the coding program fully funded by KFC through techno knowledge. So we don't work in isolation in that we will create the coding program, we will create all of this. It's about we know there's this need, who can help us. And so we've had a lot of partners in the past and continue to have as well in the present. And we hope that that continues, because I think that is a key part of being able to determine what do we need, what isn't there. So that's one aspect of how do you determine. The second is through a lot of focus group discussions. Involve the parents, involve the teachers, involve the students. What's missing? What's not happening? What do you think we need? Because like I said, these communities also that we are in a very different, KPS is very different from SMB. So what they feel they need, what they feel is happening is very different. And it can be, as a very simple example, for example, in SMB, we have to have in the morning, we have to have our Naat and our Quran recitation and all of that as part of assembly. Now that may seem very small, perhaps, but actually that's really important to the community. And if we take that out, there's a huge problem. And so an assembly time is in itself also an important piece in terms of the educational piece, right? People often think assembly is just matlab, aao, hello, hi, bolo, or chale jao. But no, what you're doing in assembly, what you're curating in that time, or what is the purpose of it? What are you using that time for? What are the children learning? Why are they there? All of that has thought behind it. It's not just aaye, khade ho gaye, chale gaye. And so those kinds of things is what the community also kind of determines and derives. So it's not all that you can alone say, this is what I'm going to do and this is what I think. But you need to have everybody involved in determining what should be there, what shouldn't. And finally, the disabilities. So the simple answer to this is at this point, we don't. But there is a need, and there are students which we know have physical as well as cognitive disabilities. And we are wanting to move towards that. Again, both infrastructurally, so make sure the classrooms are accessible. Do we have wheelchair ramps, the physical aspect of it, as well as, of course, are our teachers ready and able to support the students the way they need. So at present, is that happening? No. Do we want to move that way? Yes, absolutely.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Harinaji. We have a question from Rihana Kazi over here. And Rihana is asking about if you could possibly talk about the challenges that you faced in relation to community and the parents when you sort of like engage with them. Rihana, have I captured the essence of your question? You're very welcome to join and ask it your. Ji, theek hai. Over to you, Amna ji. Challenges, what are the challenges? Have been the challenges when engaging with the community and parents? Over to you.
So like I said, so first off, there's a lot of very supportive parents, very encouraging of girls' education, very supportive of what the school does. I'm sure you've also now perhaps seen videos that we put up just yesterday from admission day. We have people lining up from 3 in the morning in front of SMB to get their students enrolled. So we have a lot of, as a result perhaps of the number of years we've now been in operation, there is a lot of support. Some areas where we continue to struggle is, for example, the perception, like I said, of music, right? So we want to offer a co-curricular, we want to say an extracurricular, we want to say music is an important part of holistic well-being. It's great as a stress reliever. It's also, children who can be very talented in many different ways, so understand different abilities. And yet we face a lot of, I don't want my daughter to do this. I don't want her to play an instrument. I'm not comfortable with this. And so there's a small segment who we offer music to because those are the only ones whose parents will allow them to. So in these kinds of areas, we do get a lot of, we still continue to face a challenge in terms of changing of perception. But in most areas, I would say we have a very, very supportive parent body. And a lot of it, I will give credit entirely to our school management. So also to help explain the governance structure, we have a headmistress, so an HM from the government side in all government schools. And then we hire our own, who's called a project manager. And they report to the head office, so to us, whereas the HM reports to the DEO, they don't report to us. So it is a parallel structure in that sense within the school in terms of governance. Um, but both the HM and the project manager are meant to deal with the community and the parents together. So it's a lot of joint kind of work that they do, and we make sure that the HM is on board with our vision, mission, with what it is that how we would like for us to be in terms of how we see child protection, how we want to give our girls a choice, give them a voice, all of that. So we make sure that there is a lot of alignment in both of these these leadership roles, and then they're the ones who speak with the community, the parents, and so on. And so that has significantly helped, because I am a strong believer that when you're working in a school, whether with students or with parents, a lot of it, 30% of your job is counseling. Even with students, a good teacher is a good counselor. You
Yeah.
have to be able to understand your child, work with them, help them, direct them a little bit, be a really good listener. And I think that what we have managed to do with our leadership is we have these great project managers and headmistresses in both schools who are able to help, with that little bit of navigation with the parents and the community. So we've seen a lot of success. The biggest challenge was going to be definitely the extracurriculars that we try and introduce, that sometimes, whether it's sports or music, that because it's not conventional, tends to, get a lot of reaction.
Thank you, Anna. We have Zain over here from LUMSEX, and his question is, what are the 2 or 3 key achievements or buy-ins from the interventions that have been done until now? So, I mean, by this, he means that something that was cost effective and had an impact. Over to you.
Cost effective and had an impact. And by buy-in, you mean just
like it really
government?
worked? Yeah, something like this. Over to you.
So definitely the first is going to be the LSBE curriculum. And the reason I say that, because of course we have buy-in from the government, which is always great. But what I am particularly happy about is that we've had parents come in and say our girls are more comfortable to come to us and talk about X, Y, and Z. We then ran a focus group very recently. We hired a consultant and we had her speak to the students, speak to the teachers, speak to the parents. And again, her finding was that girls actually have a know-how, a very solid understanding of what is acceptable, what is unacceptable in terms of touch, in terms of what people are saying to them, what is good behavior, what is unacceptable, what makes them uncomfortable. They're very cognizant at a very young age. So for me, I think that's a huge success if the child themselves is demonstrating a lot of learning in terms of self-awareness and self-esteem and self-confidence, So for me, those were definitely, is definitely a very, very key component. A big part of LSBE is currently, when the government has adopted it, it has put this into the social studies curriculum. So it's integrating it within a certain curriculum, whereas we teach it as a separate subject. So we have it allocated a different time slot. It's a dedicated, 45 minutes to LSBE every week. And so for us, I think that that's really important because that has been a big reason for the success of the program. But yeah, if you ask me about the measurement of success, because it's not just about the government option, but also how much improvement can I see in my students. And for that, LSB has been one of the core ones. Breakfast program, although it's not cost effective yet, it is a fully funded program through donors. So I'm not going to say it's cost effective, just as a disclaimer to that question, but it's been highly effective. And this, again, I go back to like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? If you are not comfortable in your physical environment, if you are not within yourself comfortable, so you're hungry, you're hot, you're tired, you are not paying attention in school. It's really as simple as forget school, not even in the office, right? Or anywhere. And so this is a similar concern I had in other places that I've worked, where we tend to focus, for example, on pedagogy and, how are we making things engaging? But I've been to schools up north that are so cold in the winter. It's so cold. It's impossible to sit there, right? So the teacher can be engaging. She can be putting her heart into that lesson. And the child just cannot, because it is just so cold. And you don't have fireplaces, you don't have heating. So to expect the child to suddenly be performing, I think is a naive assumption, and saying that we're intervening with pedagogy. It's the same case again when you don't have bathrooms. In many government schools, there aren't separate washrooms for girls. And so they will go the whole day without going to the bathroom. Of course, they're not paying attention by the fourth, fifth period, right? All they're doing is just really thinking about going to a bathroom. So we need to be really realistic about, are this child's physical needs met? And so hence, I would say again, the breakfast program in that case has proved very successful. And it's the parents that tell us that there's like happy children going to school, happy to go to school, because they know they're going to get the breakfast, they know they're going to be well fed, and then fine, they learn, you know. So there's that one step that we've gotten. And like I said, that you don't have girls fainting, you don't have upset students, and all of that is just because a physical need is met. So those would be my top two.
Thank you so much. Rabia Tayyaba had a question. Rabia, you raised your hand.
Yes, Dr. Taiba, thank you so much. Very inspirational talk. Amna, you talked about ongoing teacher training. How rigorous is that? Like, is this like after during that inset, or during summer break, or after like every Friday evening, or it's ongoing? Like, I feel that in public schools and low-cost private schools, the gap between teachers' knowledge and the curriculum, as well as because they don't understand, you were talking about Maslow's hierarchy of need.
Yes.
So I feel that many teachers, their needs are not met. I'll be like very straight.
Yeah.
They have very challenging backgrounds. We pay them so like they are so less paid in terms of like in these inflation days, 15,000, 20,000 in low-cost private schools. They are not passionate. They are not motivated. They like. So how can they address the students' needs? How can they empathize with the students when they don't know how to take care of their own needs, and their own needs are not met? And then this gap between their knowledge and the content, and they're not skilled. They don't know about pedagogy. They're not about do not know about student engagement. So they need rigorous training definitely, as well as academic knowledge. So how do
Question of Amna के space छोड़ने के time कम है जी Amna जी. Thank you so much for the excellent question.
Yes.
Rabia, that's a fantastic question, and actually it's great for this talk, because like I said, you have to look at all the moving pieces, and you're right. Unless teachers are supported and taken care of, they're not going to help, right? So that system that I was talking about, if you help them just with ongoing professional development, it doesn't matter if they're not motivated, if they're not paid well, and all of that. So yes, it's a big problem. I'm going to address the first before the second. The first is, how do you motivate them? Look, for the government teachers, I can't pay them because we're in the government system, the government model, so I cannot improve their salaries. It's what the government allocates to them. Having said that, I will tell you that the number of leaves allocated to government teachers is incredible. Oh my God. Other than summer holidays, they have so many holidays in the school year that they're allowed to take. Number one, so I think it's about 35 to 40 days in the school academic year, not summer or the winter holiday. So we have tremendous teacher absenteeism, which is a huge problem for the school. But I mean, if you think about the teachers aspect, there's great benefits. There's a lot of leaves. And that's number one. Number two, when I look at it from a Zindagi Trust point of view, what I have try to do is to build a lot of motivation through appreciation. One of the things we don't do with teachers is teacher appreciation. Even if we do teacher appreciation days, it's very like, just applaud for everybody and maybe call a singer. It's not actually about the ability, their talent, where they were, where they've gotten, getting them to reflect, think about how much they've done for themselves. You know, a lot of that, those important pieces that you would also want in an employee. Like, I'm sure if you were working somewhere, you would have your annual appraisal and you talk about how you are and how you did and where you're going. We don't do that per se with teachers. We tell them how to improve on their lesson plans, and then we kind of just move on with, okay, her results are good or not good. It's a very narrow way, again, of looking at the whole craft of teaching. So what we have done is redesign the way that we appreciate our teachers, so that there is some kind of intrinsic motivation. and these kinds of things are extrinsic motivations, which are definitely difficult, like I said, because we operate with government teachers, but we can try with intrinsic motivation. So that's one of the key areas. I will, however, say that ECE is entirely teachers that we hire, so what are called project staff, because the government does not have ECE teachers. So there our pay is good, and we make sure that all of the things we can do with it, providing a good salary and so on is done. And then your second question about professional development. So it's very rigorous. It's not just in the summer, we have it year round. And the way that I've structured it is that we have individual sessions. So we have a teacher workload when we design our timetable. You have the teacher's workload. You have the time that they're not in classes. What are they doing when they're not in classes? They're probably making a lesson plan. They're checking copies. How can I support them at that time so that they're also improving their practice while, of course, they're completing their key tasks? So the whole structure is around a lot of scaffolded professional development. I am a big believer that the whole group, now let's talk about classroom management, doesn't work. It doesn't give you success. It doesn't have impact because you're not actually pitching to where the person is and what their genuine needs are. So my focus has been and remains subject specific or individual intervention. And we create the timetable, we give them the workload accordingly. So that leaves time within the school day. We don't even ask them to stay, Friday evening up, stay there or anything of that sort. And one Saturday a month is off when they come in for more subject specific training in terms of, okay, all the math teachers will learn about, a certain pedagogical approach or something. So there we do more a whole group, but whole subject specific.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you. There is another question by Saima Rosina, and it's a very interesting question. And Saima says that you have been talking about the school, which has this multi-ethnic and multi-religious diversity.
Yeah.
So how do you sort of like in your pedagogy or curriculum, how do you ensure interventions which are culturally responsive and respectful to diverse backgrounds? Thank you, Saima, for the question. Thank you, Ji.
Yeah. Thank you so much. So this is a really great, interesting question. The reason is, so often when we look at the schools we've adopted, we want to roll out the same thing at both schools, right? But then what happens is SMB, like I said, is totally not multi-religious. It's 100% Muslim population, but multi-ethnic. But KPS, on the other hand, multi-ethnic, multi-religious. So 21/5 of our population is not Muslim, it's Christian or Hindus. And so we don't want to just replicate, from LSB padhane to jo hi content yahan hai, wo yahan bhi ho, and that's it. So especially for KPS, we have to be more cognizant with our teachers in terms of what is the language that they're using, making sure they're inclusive, making sure that they are accounting or giving examples that are relevant to a population that may not understand an example that doesn't relate to them. And then on a whole school level, it's also a lot about celebrating that diversity. So have we had something for Christmas? How do we have something for a Hindu festival, holiday, and so on? And we will not have that at SMB because there's nobody to celebrate it. But we will have that at KPS to try and make sure that we are including the community and the students in as much as we can in terms of being inclusive.
Thank you so much, Amnaji. One last question. How can our students work with you? How do they reach out to you if they want to work with you for volunteer, just volunteer for work or any other way? Because they're very sold out to these issues of social justice, reaching out to marginalized communities, and they're doing work. So how do we connect our students with you?
That would be wonderful. Like I said, we're always looking for help and partners because none of this can happen in isolation. I will share my email address as well in the chat box, and I believe you have my phone number. Please reach out. We're always looking for volunteers. We're looking for help in terms of a couple of areas. So one, our curriculum and course design, does it make sense? Is it inclusive? Critique it. Help us design certain modules. So for example, if you say, I'm looking at LSBE and actually it's not, inclusive, great. Give us ideas on how to improve that, how to make it better. Give us ideas for certain modules that should be included. Happy to have help that way. We are always happy to also have you, for example, review teachers' lesson plans, give feedback in terms of being a mentor. In some cases, if that's something you enjoy and think that you would be great at in a certain subject, great. We can assign you a teacher who you would work with online through emails or whatever. So they also have mentorship outside of what we are providing.
That's fine.
To them. And other than that, if you think from my talk today, there are areas that have interested you, like, oh, what are you doing with music, and you have a music curriculum, please let's have a conversation. Because like I said, this is a massive machinery and there's so many moving parts. To be honest, sometimes I get lost. So it's possible I may have missed something that you say, hey, Amna, I think that this is so wonderful that we could contribute to. We do have something for, or we've been thinking about, what if we do it this way? So that's in the, the academic sense. We do get a lot of requests for research. So a lot of people coming in to study, for example, recently we had somebody come in to study what our students understand about road safety or, dental hygiene. We have a whole aspect of those kinds of things. If you feel, you know what, I want to study what these girls are doing, we are also happy to collaborate on that. Because like I said, not for these things only, but also if you're saying what is their understanding of LSBE, what is their understanding of X, Y, and Z, we need external evaluation. We're happy to know where we're not doing well, what we need to fix, and so on. So if there's research that you wish to do, we're happy to open up to that as well. Just feel free to reach out. I'll take a quick minute to write down my email address here. And I know, Dr. Tayyaba, you have my number.
We'll definitely share. We'll definitely share Amna's email address. It appears over here also, but we will again share it in the email. Before I come to this, Maham, very short question of yours. There was just something very interesting that Amna pointed out. Amna, I remember when we were trying to reach out to you, you were dealing with this immense challenge of teachers being away on was it like census or something?
Yeah.
There's still talk about it, so we know that what are the real life challenges in schools.
Yes, so we lost all of our government teachers from both schools earlier this month. For the whole month, they're still gone on census duty and then election duty. So पहले उन्होंने 80% census duty के लिए ले लिए थे, but 20% से फिर भी मैं 3 दिन स्कूल चला रही थी. वो बेचारे 20% भी उन्होंने उठा लिए for election duty. And this is the reality of the system in which we work, right? Because unfortunately, we have put so much pressure on teachers, do better, do this, this is your pedagogy, your content needs to be better, all of that. But the reality is they're also being pushed to do all of these different tasks that is not theirs. And we had so many teachers so upset about having to do census duty because it's a very rigorous task to go house to house. It's physically exhausting. They had young babies at home. They didn't want to do it. They pleaded with us, aap kuch kare, there's nothing we could do. And so we lost all of them. So I now officially have a school that is operational only 2 days a week. And that is still with 9th and 10th ki abhi board examinations honi hai, right? So it's not like those are going away. And if these kids aren't ready, they're going to fail, which reflects obviously on the school and on the poor kids' future and all of that. So we're operational currently only for 2 days a week. We've been very blessed to have a lot of volunteers and interns from Karachi who've come in and said कि हम classes ले लेते हैं. But obviously, we have to know, okay, they won't know कि teacher कहाँ पे खत्म किया उन्होंने. We can't measure their, quality. So we have to compromise on that. Our sports teacher, our art teachers, जो भी उनका subject specialty था school में, किसी ने कहा कि मैंने math मुझे आती है, तो हमने उसको दे दिया. But that's really, it's a big compromise because you cannot assess quality. You cannot ensure that it's running the way that you want it to run. It's really a favor that somebody's doing for you. If it's a volunteer, often the volunteers disappear. That's the case with volunteering. So it's been horrendous. It's just 9 days and actually I have 3 weeks more of this. But so far, that's the real challenge of what we deal with.
Thank you so much. Maham, आपका क्वेश्चन मेरे ख्याल में बहुत छोटा आपने करना है क्योंकि टाइम बिल्कुल खत्म हो गया. ठीक है, 1-liner question. Over to you.
Yeah, so I had written it in the chat box. So my question is, since we are talking about the families of the students as well, to bring them on the same page when it comes to the child's education. My question is, how has it impacted, let's say, their participation in the community? How has there been a change at the community level? And what if there has been, what kind of it in terms of their education and any other processual activities that have started happening after your intervention?
Thank you so much, ma'am. Question आ गया. Parents के साथ जब आप engage करते हैं, the question is, has it had an impact on the community attitudes or participation? Over to you.
Yes. We want to do a large scale study on this, so it's hard to speak from a research point of view. I can only speak from a experience, which I know is not grounded in any concrete measurement. But I would say yes, in terms of, for example, if they enrolled an elder daughter, they are very likely to enroll all of the others. Once they've sent one to school and they're comfortable and happy with the environment and what the child is learning, and they feel safe कि अच्छा ऐसा कुछ नहीं पढ़ा रहे, बिल्कुल अच्छा सब सही है, उसकी growth हो रही है. So as a result, there'll be a lot more family members or siblings who will enroll. We have parents coming in saying, why aren't you opening up to boys? Please take our boys. We'd rather our boys go here than go somewhere else. So a lot of, like I said, because a lot of it is by word of mouth, and so what we hear from parents and not research-wise. But those are the two very important things we've seen. 3, we have a lot of parents pulling out their students from low-cost private schools and bringing them here. So when I talk about that long line that was outside SMB, and if you go to our social media, you're going to see that video. That they're lining up from 3 in the morning. The reason for that is not that is all a socioeconomically disadvantaged group. It's because we also have now those who were fee paying or can pay a fee. Are now not enrolling them there and bringing them here. That does, raise a lot of ethical questions. Should we take them? Should we not? Should we have some kind of a cutoff that if they can pay, don't take them? That's a separate issue. But what that does show you is that there is a lot of faith in what we are doing, in the success that we've had, for the community to see it so positively and say, well, I'd rather not pay. I want to come here. So yeah, I would say.
Thank you so much, Dr. Amna Pasha. It has been a privilege to listen to you. Great work that you people are doing amid so many challenges, and our students will definitely contact you. Lovely work. Zabardast. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you to meet you all, and thanks for the questions.
Yeah. Thank you.
Doctors.
Doctors. Thank you, Amna.